When you start your journey to modify your body entirely, it's a lengthy one. To get your body from a point where it's unnoticeable to something that's remarkable takes an exceptional amount of work. And there is an endpoint to this journey. In your mind, there's some kind of idea of where you stop. Most likely, at least, it's the isolation of your body. You imagine having a six-pack, but being entirely the same human being everywhere else. Your face, your hair, everything looks basically the same, it's just your body is better. However, when physical transformations go to the extreme, when protocols that are being used exceed what a human was ever able to tolerate in the first place, things don't happen like you thought they would in the beginning. Today we're actually discussing Natalia Sharapova. Look, I am terribly sorry. I am so bad at pronunciation of names and generally almost any word. Forgive me there. As you can see, this is one of the most radical changes, not just in a physique, but an entire person. Now, you might think that this has happened over a 10-year period. Hell, even an 8-year, 6-year period. That isn't so drastic. People age, people change, life changes entirely, but that's not the case here. This is a 3-year anniversary post, not a 10-year congratulations post. This is the 3-year point since the start of her journey. So let's take a far deeper look at what's going on here. And when I say far, I mean exceptionally far. Starting in 2018, Nate started posting in Russian, by the way, she's Russian, regarding the fact that her account initially had been hacked and someone was trying to sell it. There was apparently a much larger following that she had, and therefore her account was taken. Those people were trying to sell her account. Shortly after this post, for the new followers, I am assuming, she made another one kind of talking about who she is, and it's in this post that we hear a little bit about her aspiration goals and where she wants to end up in life. She was born in Moscow, and Instagram is for her a place to communicate, to show her experiences. Natalie mentions that her old account had over 40,000 followers, no small number, and she was doing her best to be a fitness coach. That's what she was doing with the original account as well, and that is essentially what she's going to be trying to do here. Her dream is to visit the United States, build a stable income, and this fact will be very important for much later on. Now, in these very early days, this doesn't truly seem to be anything radical. This is just a healthy person who's very invested in the fitness lifestyle, showing her body in various formats, but none of which are bad. They're all quite conservative compared to what we typically see when a gal starts getting into fitness. Regardless of this though, it's very clear to say she is 100% a fitness influencer in these early days of fitness influencing. But what became quickly obvious is her boyfriend at the time started to compete quite seriously. There's many posts with him at shows with a tan, his abs out, and he looks to have done quite well. Clearly on the sauce. I don't think anyone would dispute that fact, clearly. But this is the sort of stimulus that I think was her first step into bodybuilding, because not long after posting several series of photos of him competing, you start seeing her posting pictures of doing bodybuilding poses. We've talked about this in other videos, but it's a weird sort of psychological analysis. When a female gets into bodybuilding, it's spurred on by the group that she's with, and almost all of the time a boyfriend that she's with. This then turns into that boyfriend suggesting some sort of pharmaceutical intervention to get her better results much faster. And that, in fact, is usually how people have their worst cycle experiences, or their least effective cycle and their most virilizing, or in other words, masculinizing cycle as a female. The boys tend to push it, the girls tend to take it, because there's some trust, you would hope, there, and obviously it's not well placed. Now, I'm not saying this situation is that, but you do see this characteristic almost in every gym. This post was her first practice post, and she mentioned this was going to be her first show in the future. And at this point, we're about 2 years past her first initial post in January 2021. And at this time, it isn't really clear if she's using anything, but I would hedge against probably not. She does seem to be unaffected by gear use of any form. There's no masculinized features quite yet, but let me just hold my thoughts there, because I think we're going to get to a point where there is some clear visual changes. The day of the show isn't far away from this point. In fact, it had happened at the end of March that year. Pretty quick turnaround. She ended up placing 6th, which not quite the most astonishing placing for a show, but it is the first show, so it's not so bad. At the end of the day, bodybuilding is an error-based game. It's a thing where you do it, you figure out what's wrong, and then you improve the errors. but you can't ever learn those specific errors without having to have tried it first. It takes time, great effort, and willingness to accept failure, but that failure in turn kind of ignites the passion and drive to push harder. That pushing harder can sometimes be the antithesis of being better as a human being and a person in life, but bodybuilding, sure. She continues to say that she will not give up. She's going to move on and do better. But after the show, she started to make bodybuilding a very much mainstay of her account. In fact, it was almost the entire account moving forward past that moment and everything that she did. She even breaks down the cost of competing in a regional show, sharing how exceptionally expensive it is. And the cost that she lays out: makeup, tans, hair, registry for the show, registry for the NPC, payment for multiple different categories, because you can't just go into a show and pay to enter the show. You have to pay for every single category that you're in within that show. Crazy stuff. And furthermore, the suit, the gym membership, trainers, which is also a very large expense in bodybuilding, sports nutrition, food. I'm assuming that maybe she had some food prepped for her. It's all extremely expensive. And this is, one thing that I think people don't extrapolate often from bodybuilding is there's not much payout, even if you win and win and win. In fact, it's almost no payout. In regional shows, you're not getting anything. You might get a gift card to a supplement sponsor, or maybe they'll pay for a flight to a different show, but you're not gonna get any real monetary value because you've spent easily $3,000 to $4,000 getting ready for that said show, and in return, you get a nice trophy that someone bought from Hobby Lobby. The best chance of truly making it in bodybuilding is to get a sponsor that pays you a yearly salary, or build a social media following that's robust and loyal so that you can then shill out products to those audience members that hopefully trust you enough to buy the product that you're representing. Of which, the whole shilling out of products, I do have a new drink in a sponsor of this channel. Kolton is a really interesting supplement brand that was just released. I had actually gotten one of their drinks, started to drink it. These are hydration drinks with no caffeine because Lord knows I drink enough caffeine in the form of White Monster, the glorious holy ale, but I don't really get a lot of hydration. No electrolytes or anything like that. My diet is honestly pretty pathetic. In fact, I don't eat enough. I chronically undereat. I think most of my diet is like one steak a day, a couple things of yogurt, and maybe some eggs if I really want to fry them up. It's bad. It's not good, you guys. I might look great, but I am not that great. So getting some extra hydration and can be crucial. And this actually has, which is why I even posted about it in the first place, a optimal ratio of the actual minerals we need. You see a lot of the times these brands just throw random minerals in their drinks that actually don't represent good balance of hydration whatsoever. But this has about a 2-to-1 ratio in potassium to sodium, which is excellent. It has 315 milligrams of chloride, which is just as much as you'd likely deplete within a workout. And the same thing can be said about the magnesium within this product. A really good product, very affordable and cost effective, as well as tastes absolutely delicious. I prefer the white cherry one. You can go to their website right now. I'll be leaving it in the description below, and use code COACHK to get yourself a nice little discount. Moving on with the video. Now, I do believe around the later 2021 period, she starts to probably abuse some Sazul with a more aggressive model. Her face changes pretty sharply from those early Natty days, and not only that, one thing you notice is there's a lot of short hairs around her crowns or temples. You usually see this for a lot of different reasons. It's never just one, so don't take this as a full conclusion. But a lot of the time when women dye their hair and they fry those ends and get tons of split ends, or maybe there's occupational demands that require them to have their hair pulled back really tightly. The military is a great example of this. Or generally women with androgenic alopecia, they'll see their hairs or those crown hairs miniaturizing or just tearing from stress or splitting from stress. The androgenic alopecia one is really critical here though. Those hairs that are the follicles really that are miniaturizing are never able to reach full maturation. They get shorter and shorter and more squirrely because the full growth cycle of that hair follicle is unable to be achieved. In this case, you might see those short hairs that are becoming more frequent around those temples as a representation of follicles acting under hormonal influence. There's other things here too of her face. You generally see some slight water retention even with non-estrogenic androgens or steroids that is caused by just affecting the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, something that is massively directly impacted by steroids and growth hormone that isn't related to estrogen entirely, you tend to see some slight water retention. And I think we're getting a glimpse of that here. Moving forward in the journey of bodybuilding, I think the walls are getting taller and taller. It's that walled garden effect that I always talk about. On the inside, everything looks pretty and gorgeous, and the people you surround yourself with are super supportive and giving you tons of affirmation and saying you're doing a great job. This is how it's supposed to be going. Everything looks great. Don't worry about it. Don't look down. Just keep looking forward. While outside of the wall, everybody else that's kind of outside of that inner circle of you is like, ooh, some things are going on there that are a bit questionable. You might want to slow down. You might want to take a thought about what you're doing. That doesn't often get heard. But the reason this walled garden is perceivably probably growing is because now she's able to travel, and a lot of it. She's going to Miami, the course selling guru capital of the world, the Lamborghini SVJ and Hellcat reppin' streets, brother. That is the home of the Repo Lot Central, the home of the we lease exotic cars for 3 months out of the year for $17,000. Pay us now and post on Instagram later.
Miami's daily traffic. Coño, me cago en la pinga.
Anyways, all may actually be finally lining up with where she wants to be in life. Not only that, but she went to the Olympia. She got to experience the world's most premier bodybuilding show. At this time, I think she's also looking pretty freaking gnarly, further pushing the idea that she's probably using some androgens. And if we fast forward a bit, this is further solidified by her placings in her shows drastically improving. I mean, just look at those quads. This is a 6-month difference per her caption, but she doesn't stop there. A few months go by and she competes again. And I think this photo does pretty good justice of showing the changes that we'll be discussing here. Also, kudos to her for staying with her mans this whole time. Pretty good stuff. If I had anybody in my life stay with me for that long, I'd be probably a lot less, well, I would drink less Monster. Let's just put it that way. Keeping in mind here, folks, from start of this, like first show to now, there has been no break. It has been constant on the gas. I mean, a few months lapse, but then another show happens. There's no time for an off season. There's no time for off time of the Sizul, the special products. There's no time to check health, recalibrate, assess. It is one show to the next show, 3, 4, 5 months later. That is not enough time to really do anything of restorative value at all. In this time, and the reason I think that clearly she's using anabolics is without that massive phase of having sort of this caloric surplus, at least slightly so, she's been growing the whole time. A musculature maturity is going through the roof. She's getting more vascular. She's getting bigger. These things don't tend to happen in a massive deficit month after month after month. And I think this is the point where we've kind of reached full commitment. The point where someone reaches a vector of approach that's basically non-escapable. You've committed so far into the path that most of your assets, most of your monetary expenses, most of your physiology is dedicated towards the path, and pulling out now would be far too risky for most people to accept. Your group, your friends, your boyfriend, your whole dynamic is invested in this route. And so packing out isn't a good and viable option, seemingly at least, right? That's the thought process. I'm sure you've been somewhere in life where you've been so invested in a certain path that when you start to look back, it seems just further and further unrealistic. It's like when you go down a hiking path that's like 6 miles long and you're 2 miles into it and you realize you didn't bring water, but 2 miles back is a really long way and there might be someone with water up ahead, but there also couldn't be. So it's like, do I walk 2 miles back? You know, it's like this weird conundrum. Not saying that she was facing this conundrum, but I would imagine a lot of people do. So she keeps going. You know, she's 27 years old here, that year turning into a pro, an outstanding accomplishment for her relatively short time with competing. And that is massive. Like, you can't take that away from her. You might be thinking,
Coach, she ain't that bad. Like, she ain't that bad.
dog, let me let you listen to this.
В зале, на улице, где-либо еще.
100% сталкиваюсь. В последнее время достаточно часто. Помимо зала, где мои формы и так достаточно выделяются, я начала замечать уже и на улице. Так как я хожу сейчас часто в лосинах, потому что джинсы уже не по размеру, мои ноги вызывают достаточно большое внимание и, как правило, это больше с неким, наверное, недоумением и непониманием, кто я, что я и почему так выгляжу. Ну и больше в летнее время это определенный негатив я начала замечать со стороны людей.
Clearly, we see a lot and hear a lot of things changing here. You have an enlarged jaw, large mandible. You have an inflamed face. It's a much rounder face and significantly deeper voice. She's also struggling with acne very openly, which I think she believes is due to something else other than steroids, but that is wildly inaccurate, okay? Androgen receptor activation will affect sebaceous glands. Those sebaceous glands in response release more triglycerides, cholesterol, and other substances to the skin, which proliferate bacteria. Now, that dysbiosis of the skin causes massive swelling, the cystic acne. That is very hard to get rid of. It doesn't happen in nature most commonly to the extent at which bodybuilders experience it, and it is because those sebaceous glands are mediated through androgen receptors. Now, if a female was to have chosen a safer route for PEDs, would we be seeing this type of expression? No, and that's kind of the dead giveaway. That happens when women use male hormones, androgens, steroids, right? It doesn't happen when a female uses growth hormone, for instance. This is a unique problem to a small demographic of the world, and when a gal uses less than efficacious routes of administration to performance-enhancing drugs to get to her goals. But all of this brings us to now. Truly massive woman, a unit even amongst men. In 3 years, she entirely changed her body, but also many other features. Just comparing this to the beginning of her bodybuilding journey, the changes to her entire presence, her face, I mean, everything, it's drastic. The changes are so dramatic, they're almost life-changing. But along with it, she's made some money. She got to travel. She made fitness a very large part of her life, basically everything about her life. And if we kick back to where she started her Instagram, this was a part of her mission statement. To what cost, you might ask? And was this the path that she saw for herself when she made that statement? It's hard to say, really, it's hard to say, but she did ultimately get to what her goal was. But why did these changes happen? Why did her voice get deeper? Why did we see this facial enlargement? Why was she so rapidly changed as a human being? Usually something you'd see on the time scale of a 6-year journey turned into a 3-year journey, almost less than that, really. And why did we start to see things like vocal deepening, facial enlargement, receding hairlines, all of these features? Well, when women use anabolic steroids, the changes go way beyond muscle. These drugs bind to androgen receptors in tissues all over the body. It's not specific, it's not isolated. And places that these androgens are binding to, most people don't realize until the effects become very, very obvious. I could sit here and talk about it all day, it ain't gonna make a hair of a difference. The voice is one of those examples that is most clear with women because when a gal gets a really deep voice, it is apparent. Androgens act directly on the larynx, thickening the vocal cords and remodeling the cartilage in there, just like puberty does in males. That's why the pitch drops so dramatically within 1 year to maybe even 2 years of use. Sometimes in comment sections below it, some of y'all say that you ran a cycle for 4 weeks and you got a much deeper voice, which is just insane. And the terrible part about this is once those vocal folds and cords have thickened, that the cartilage is adapted, it doesn't go back. It is a very much permanent effect that you'll have to live with for the rest of your life. Now, facial changes are another clear thing that we're dealing with here. Androgens do stimulate as much as the women I talk about sometimes in these videos will vehemently say they don't. They do. And there's even transgender studies that very much clarify this as clear as day. This is a physiological adjustment to androgens being induced in a female system. They do stimulate bone remodeling and connective tissue growth. Over time, the jaw broadens, the cheekbones become more prominent, and the face looks heavier, more angular. Add an increased oil production from sebaceous glands and you get a fuller, rougher, sometimes acne-prone skin that looks more masculinized. And then there's the hairlines. Androgens, man, they like to nuke that hairline. I can tell you from firsthand experience. It's not a great time. It's not a great time at all. You see, androgens are going to act on androgen receptors, and those receptors are on these little follicles on your head, and it will shrink that follicle and cause calcification around it, as well as basically just cutting off its supply supply or ability to grow. It's called hair follicle miniaturization. Once this happens, it is as too irreversible. It is an effect that you have to live with for the rest of your life. So those temples receding back, maybe diffuse thinning in your hair where your scalp becomes more visible at any point in the day. You stand under a harsh light and now you can see like the back of your head. These things all happen in response to androgens, testosterone, DHT derivatives, and even nandrolones. As much as people tend not to say that, we've seen many case studies where women abused nandrolone variations of steroids and still had massive amounts of hair loss. Put this all together and you have a slew of nasty side effects, things that a woman should never have to face. They are the direct consequences of a female abusing hormones to achieve a certain outcome. It is a hyperandrogenic state that a female would never normally be exposed to in existence. And the crazy thing is it's a very predictable outcome. It's super easy to know what's going to happen because we have so many years of research on this, more research than I have lived in years. I mean, it's crazy. Is it all worth it? That's the common question. Is this really worth it? A moderate to low level income for the rest of your life? Maybe you get a sponsorship, hoping, right? Crossing your fingers you get that really good sponsorship, or crossing your fingers that you build a really good social media following. But if you don't, I mean, you're sitting there with a very barely livable income, and a lot of that income is being spent towards bodybuilding. It's a high monetary cost and a low return on investment. Some people pursue it and develop themselves entirely into that pursuit. They become the thing. They become the bodybuilding in their lives. Others treat it as a hobby and just something fun that they do to look good, but never really take it too extreme or seriously. Either way, I don't know what the answer is. I just think it's important to be transparent about the fact that these things, once you get to this level, it is irreversible. You develop this physique, that is all you have. We aren't talking about a small amount of PED usage here. We're talking about an astronomical amount. So with that, be safe. Subscribe to the channel if you like this video. Check out our next videos that YouTube is going to recommend to you here. I really appreciate you being here. Every single one of you means so much to me. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful week and a better year, and you get so much success out of your life that it could make you cry, genuinely.